dangerous things. Even when we try to regulate them, they weasel their way out. That's what happened between 1938 and the present crisis. They basically weaseled their way out of all the regulations. And when they have a lot of money, they buy a lot of politicians, and eventually they weasel out. We don't have to put up with it. Sensible capitalism, social democracy should be demanding nationalization of the financial sector, because you don't need a privately run financial sector. That's a very simple process that basically even bad governments can run a lot more safely and sensibly than it's being run by the powers that be under some sort of free market conditions. So the sensible demand right now would be nationalized, and if you can't bring yourself to do that, then you have to engage in some sort of competent regulation. In the US, we have to put Glass-Steagall back in instead of taking it out, which is what we did in 1999. You simply have to outlaw all the derivative trading, which in no way improves economic efficiency at all. It's just a vehicle through which the banks are making a tremendous amount of profits, including one that makes very risky situations, and then we have to pay when we bail them out. You just got to say no to all that. I mean, and social democracy needs to wake up and realize we got to say no to that. We can't be so reliant on the political contributions of the financial sector to run against the center-right that we basically just don't stand up to these guys. That's not a kind of politician you can vote for anymore.
So, did you have a question?
There's a lot here. I'm going to read your book because it's really interesting. And I don't only think there's a financial crisis, but also an environmental crisis. Makes it necessary to go in this direction somehow. Exactly your system is one possible, might be other. But I think you're underestimating the coordination part, not the incentive part, because that I think is so. If we run this kind of economy or this kind of system with hundreds of goods, it's going to work. But if we're going to have 100,000, like we have now, you have so many goods, so it's so complex, it's so difficult. Then you can't just say you add them up and you make a few iterations. You might have to have hundreds of iterations, and it can be much more complex, I think, and difficult than you think. That doesn't mean it's not possible to solve, but it's going to be more it's going to be more difficult and complex than you seem to say when you're presenting this.
I think you make a valid point, and I'll own up to something publicly. What we did 20 years ago was prove that if you make a standard set of assumptions, the same ones they make to say that markets will equilibrate. If you make the standard set of assumptions, this procedure will reach a feasible plan that's efficient. That's different from, well, but those standard set of assumptions always include assumptions that aren't true in the real world. Always. And so an important piece of work that needs to be done is some simulation modeling of, and you can do it as simulation modeling. There's actually some very, very good software programming out there called microsimulation, where you have workers' councils and producers' councils, and you attribute to them sort of technologies of certain kinds, and you basically have them play the game of participatory planning, and you make hundreds of thousands of goods, and you make hundreds of thousands of councils, and you look and see how many iterations does this take, and you start to think about and you start to work on, well, wait, that was taking a lot of iterations. Are there ways to do shortcuts? Are there ways to intervene? There's a tremendous amount of intellectual work regarding this kind of planning that should be done and has not been done in the last 20 years. I keep looking for for people to do that with. Believe me, this is not the kind of thing you get grant money from when you go out and ask for it. So you're correct that part of, have you really got your act together? Can you show me that this wouldn't be overly burdensome? That there's still a lot of work to do along those lines. I would just say you're absolutely right about that.
Yeah, you?
I had a couple of questions. Well, I haven't read the book, so I probably did some of the questions you would have answered. But
It's in Finland. You can't have read it yet.
No,
It hasn't even gotten here.
But one of the things that I think I wanted to ask you is how will this, in your model, how you would see the individual freedom? Because I would imagine that anyone who can make better in the market economy will pack and leave. On the other hand, someone who will be uncomfortable with collective consumption would also be not happy. So how do you
Well, let's just think about what you're free to do and what you're not free to do. That's the simple way to do it, right? Sort of straightforward, and we'll just see. As a worker, are you free to say, I don't like working here, I want to leave, I want to go apply to work there? Yes?
If you have some money or power to say no, I think, or I will not be able to say no if I have no money.
Can you say no if you have no money now?
Yeah, but it's tough.
Why would it be any tougher? There's an interesting decision out there that has to be made. What if you're able to work in Sweden right now? You don't qualify for disability, and you know the labor market board offers you a job and finds you a job, and you just said, nah, I just don't want it. What happens?
Fas 3.
I don't know the answer. I'm really asking.
When you are free, you have no money at all from the state when you say no to a job.
Is there no
There is no
minimal
basic
welfare
income.
payment even for those who are not disabled, who just otherwise would be totally indigent? No, I guess not, okay? I guess the answer is no. Well, a participatory economy would have to decide whether, you know, it wants that to be the case or it doesn't want that to be the case. This is actually the bone of contention, the principal bone of contention between Michael Howard and his vision of market socialism and David Schweikert and his vision. In Michael Howard's version of market socialism, he says there should be a guaranteed basic income, even for the total dregs of society who are capable of working and just say I refuse to. There should, and David Schweikert says he's a little more hard-ass, and he says I don't see why. So that decision is going to have to be made in any economy. You know, social democratic economies made it, neoliberal economies make it, market socialist economies have to make it, the participatory economy has to make it. But you're certainly, so there may be or may not be sort of a basic guarantee even for people who could work, we all think should be working, but they refuse to. There either might be or there might not be. But certainly, that aside, you're free to go and work wherever, you're free to go and apply to work wherever you want. Now, in this economy, are you free to go and apply to work and say, oh, I'm not just applying, you got to hire me? No. In a participatory economy, are you free to apply any place you want? And it's not just you're free to apply, you say, no, you got to hire me. You don't have a choice. No. As a consumer, but you are free to apply to work any place you want. Once you get there, what freedoms do you have? You have as much vote as anybody else in that workplace over everything that workplace decides to do or not decides to do. As a consumer, what freedom do you have? Well, right now, are you free to consume whatever you want given your income? Yes. In a participatory economy, are you free to consume whatever you want given your income? Yes. Are you free to consume more than your income? You could by borrowing, but presumably you'll pay back. But you're not free to just consume more than your income, you know, without paying back. The same thing holds. What's the difference? The difference is what's going to determine your income is quite different in a participatory economy than right now. Right now what determines your income is, do you own a lot of shares of stock? Are you very wealthy? Are you a big landowner? You know, do you have a job as a CEO of a corporation? Do you have a job as a surgeon? Or are you working as a garbage collector? Those are the kinds of things with no income. You know, with no non-labor income, with no rental income, with no dividend income. That's what determines your income in the present. In a participatory economy, the only thing that determines your income is different from anybody else is whether you engaged in more sacrifices and sort of worked hard with more effort in your workplace, and your co-workers have confirmed that for us. But other than that, within your income, you're free to consume whatever you want. Are you free to save? Are you free to borrow? Yes.